I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody to OpenAQ's Global Community Series event, Air Quality Data and Citizen Science, Pushing for Environmental Justice. My name is Shruti Modikirti. I'm the platform lead at OpenAQ, and joining me is Chisato Calvert, who is the Deputy Director at OpenAQ. So we first wanted to start off with an Indigenous land acknowledgement. So Chisato is currently on the traditional lands of the Coast Miwok in southern Pomo, and I'm currently on the traditional land of Central Sierra Miwok. And we thought it was really important to start off with this because we're talking about environmental justice, and we felt it's important to acknowledge the Native people who were here before us and the continued environmental injustices that occur in Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. And we hope that this will be just the starting point for further engagement with Indigenous groups going forward. So OpenAQ is a 501c3 nonprofit. Our main mission is to connect open air quality data and community to fight air inequality all across the world. And we do that by providing a core global air quality data infrastructure and open source tooling that's free and open to the public. We currently have open data from 95 countries, which we've collected over the past 5 years. And we use the gravity of this data to get diverse stakeholders, including scientists, journalists, software developers, government agency staff, artists, policymakers, activists, and a whole bunch of other people to work together on fighting air inequality. So the OpenAQ platform, this is a map of a lot of the data that we have. We have over 500 million data points from 147 different government sources. So for example, the US EPA or DEFRA in the UK. And like I said earlier, we have data from 95 countries, and we have, and the data is available through an API, and you can access real-time as well as historical data. And one exciting thing is that we also will be adding low-cost sensor data to the platform towards the end of this year. And another exciting development is that we are working on a community tool called Air Quality Snapshot, and this is sort of a preview. It's still in development, but the idea is that you'll be able to easily access the data on the platform in a way that's more digestible than just getting a bunch of data through the API. So you can see some statistics as well as graphs showing the trend over time and some information about where all the data is coming from. And with that, I will hand it off to Chisato, who will kick off the exciting panelist portion of this webinar.
Great, thank you all so much for joining. Just as a reminder, this webinar is recorded, so we'll be able to share the recording with everyone following the event. And please introduce yourself, including your name, your organization, and location in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. We want it to be as engaging as possible for all participants. And also in terms of the agenda, we will have a quick 2-minute Q&A session following each presentation. So if you have specific questions for each speaker as they're speaking and sharing their presentations, please do so by adding your questions to the Q&A feature in the Zoom. And then also following this, we'll have a more in-depth Q&A pertaining to all panelists, and then a discussion facilitated by OpenAQ following all of the presentations. As an overview of today, we'll be first hearing from Jacoby Wilson at the University of Maryland, followed by Azjarkal Tsoksehan at Breathe Mongolia, Chege James from Sensors Africa, Jacob Crane from Salt Lake City Air Protectors, Abid Omar from Pakistan Air Quality Initiative, and Antonio Garcia Esquivel from CitiSense. Our first speaker is Dr. Jacoby Wilson. Dr. Wilson is an associate professor with the Maryland Institute for Applied Environmental Health and Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, School of Public Health at the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Wilson is an environmental health scientist with over 10 years of experience working in community university partnerships on environmental health and justice issues. He has experience in exposure science and applied environmental health, including community-based exposure assessment, environmental justice science, social epidemiology, environmental health disparities, built environment, air pollution monitoring, and community-based participatory research. And for the past 2 years, he has built a program on community engagement, environmental justice, and health to engage impact communities, advocacy groups, and policymakers in Maryland and the Washington, D.C. region justice issues and environmental health disparities. And Dr. Wilson will share screen.
So can y'all hear me all right? I think I'm having some bandwidth issues on my side. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. Okay. So thank you for the invitation today. Really excited to be here. I think it's one of the first panels we have so many folks from around the world doing air quality work. So it's a privilege to be here. As was done by the conveners of this event, I'm also going to do a land acknowledgement. So I want to acknowledge that I'm at the University of Maryland College Park on the land of the Piscataway peoples. And so I think it's really important to talk about the folks who came before us and the folks who, you know, without them, we wouldn't be here. And the fact that exploitation and displacement of those peoples, that is an environmental justice issue. So I appreciate y'all doing that. What I'll do in my 10 minutes is talk about my environmental justice work. As was said, I'm an associate professor at University of Maryland College Park. I need to update my bio. That bio is so old. I always laugh when I say 2 years. I've been in Maryland for 9 years now. So that's on me. I got to go into the system, just like click a couple buttons. But just to get a little bit of background on the EJ movement, you know, many of you are familiar with the environmental justice movement. It's actually a global environmental justice movement, right? And so in the US context, Dr. King is in many ways the father of the EJ movement. His work in the Sanitation Workers Strike in 1968, looking at issues around labor, issues of environment. You see men carrying around a sign saying, "I am a man," is really relevant to this discussion about inequality. You're talking about air inequality, social inequalities. We have an uprising against racism in the US and around the world because of structured inequality, because of systemic racism. The EJ movement is fighting against these types of inequalities and racism. So just like you see men carrying around signs in the 60s, you've seen people carrying around signs recently. "I'm a man, recognize my humanity." When you think about environmental justice, all communities who want air quality saying, recognize our humanity. We should not be burdened by pollution sources that impact our health. So I just want to say that real quick, because that's a really important part of environmental justice. We're talking about a human right to clean air and human right to other things as well, right? So in my work in the US context, the EPA permits facilities, right, under the Clean Air Act. But what's happened is in many communities of color, Black and Indigenous people, color communities, they for some reason tend to disproportionately host a lot of these air pollution sources, whether it be stationary sources or mobile sources, right? Whether it be major sources of the Clean Air Act or minor sources. And that's a form of environmental injustice. And I like to call it environmental racism, and really just to be more provocative, call it environmental slavery, because you're basically using communities to host these land uses. They are absorbing the externalities produced by these unhealthy land uses, particularly when we think about pollution sources, right? And so their ecosystems are absorbing the pollution, right? But think about it, don't forget this, y'all, when we think about health effects, their bodies are literally absorbing the pollutants. So think about the impacts of that. One of the primary pollutants of concern when we combust fossil fuels, and that's another part of this discussion, right? The whole fossil fuel continuum, right? That's a part of global environmental injustice, the fight that we have for justice. This particular matter. So particular matter impacts health in many ways. PM can cause asthma attacks, it can cause elevated blood pressure, cause heart disease, cause stroke, contribute to Alzheimer's, contribute to diabetes, right? It can also cause birth defects, increasing for mortality. It can cause cancer. it can cause premature mortality, and it can impact life expectancy. So communities impacted by environmental injustice, they're dealing a lot with particulate matter. Also, particulate matter is very efficient at delivering toxicants to different parts of the body. So you think about, there's no safe level of particulate matter, those things level of lead, right? Or in some other metals, but it can also deliver lead. It can deliver PAHs. It can deliver dioxins. It can, things absorb to it, and it can deliver those metals and some of those other toxicants, to other parts of the body. And so it's a very important point when we think about this whole COVID-19 pandemic that we're in, and the research around aerosols, and Dr. Don Milton, who's probably on this call right now, his work is really important on that issue. Just the association between being in an area that has more poor air quality and as a risk factor for COVID-19. Another pollutant concern in these communities is black carbon. So we had national ambient air quality standards for particulate matter, but we don't have one for black carbon, even though a major source of black carbon in many of our communities is going to be buses, it will be diesel truck traffic. So when you think about these facilities where you have a lot of pollution being produced, right, you also have the industrial truck traffic associated with those facilities. So black carbon causes a lot of the same health effects that a particulate matter does. So think about the complex, the mixtures that people are exposed to when they're dealing with environmental injustice. It's just not particulate matter. It's just not black carbon. It's just not PHs. It's just not VOCs like BTEX, right? There's also dioxins if you live near effluents, if you live near an incinerator. You may be living near a landfill, you're dealing with methane, right? You may be living in a pipeline, you're dealing with methane. The fracking site dealing with methane. So there's multiple types of pollution sources that for some reason, again, these hazards, these uses tend to be in BIPOC communities, tend to be more often in low wealth communities. And so in my work, I really try to do community engagement, try to, think about this, y'all. The folks who live in these communities on the front line, the fence line, they are the true subject matter experts. So if we're gonna really solve the problem of environmental air quality, we need to engage them. So in most of my work, we try to do engagement, outreach, involvement, consultation, and really try to do more participatory action research, more CBPR, and more community-driven research. I like to say if the work should be of the community, for the community, and by the community. So I really try to engage and empower communities through science. And I'm on the board of the Citizen Science Association. So we talk a lot about the democratization of science, access to scientific data. But for me, if you're really going to work with communities, you should be doing CBPR, or you should be doing more community-driven research. And what is CBPR? It's really engage the community in all stages of the research process, okay? So research questions, study design, okay? Because again, you want to get more relevant information, relevant data that's actionable, that's usable. To me as a scientist, if you're doing science is just collecting data, you're not engaging folks to translate to action, all you're really doing in many ways is colonial science. For those of you who know about what I'm talking about, scientific colonialism, that's not the kind of science that we need to be doing in today's time with all these different air quality issues that people are dealing with. We have to use that data for action and real change. So I mentioned citizen science. Citizen science is important because it's a way to democratize access to science. Anyone could be a scientist. You don't have to have a PhD to be a scientist. And so what's important to me is to making sure that we get scientific tools and resources into the hands of the people who are most impacted so they can use that information for action again. Really, really important to value and support community cultural knowledge systems. And citizen science, or you want to call it public science, you can call it there's other terms for, because citizen science, the term may not be as inclusive. I think that's really important to note. And one of the problems with the EPA monitoring in the US, you may have a monitor, 20 miles down from your house, but they're building a factory right by your neighborhood. They'll use the data from the monitor 20 miles down from your house and say, well, hey, because we're gonna be emitting this amount of particulate matter, we're gonna stay in attainment. So it wouldn't be a big deal. That is bad science, y'all. That is exposure misclassification. And so right now, the EPA for years, and I'll be provocative saying this, has been getting away with state-sanctioned poisoning of communities impacted by environmental injustice. If you're gonna permit facility, at least have some good data. Model data is not good enough. When you're an EJ community, you have multiple pollution sources. So the NACs are not good enough, actually. So fundamentally, we have to do our own monitoring because the government does not have the monitoring footprint to reflect the industrial footprint in the US, okay? So we focus a lot on low-cost air quality monitors to get the tools into the hands of the people. Really, really important again. Now, they may be less accurate low-cost sensors than federal reference method monitors or federal equivalency method monitors, but you can do co-location, right? But so one way to use this low-cost sensor data is really to empower folks, to educate folks. That's one of the biggest impacts. But you can also, when you have more people empowered, guess what? They can go to the town hall meeting and talk to their representatives and say, hey, we don't want this facility here. They can go to the zoning meeting to say, we don't want this facility here. But for me, the best way to do this is to have low-cost sensors co-located with an FEM and FRM to making sure that you have a robust, rigorous sort of air quality monitoring network. Now, we're doing some work in Cheverly, Maryland. Cheverly is in Prince County. It's a community that's concerned about metal recyclers, junkyards, and also highway traffic. So we've been working for maybe about 2 years with them and helping them to build a hyperlocal air quality monitoring network. I would be remiss by not giving a shout out to some of my students in the lab. One of the main students who's been helping out with this is Yan Michael Archer at UMD. Shout out to Yan. So we've been meeting with them. We're getting some low-cost sensors up, primarily the purple sensor to measure PM 2.5. So here's just the location, a map that shows some of the potential locations of some of the monitors in this area, in this community. We've been working since 2018, fall of 2018, in Savannah, Georgia. So for those of you who know about the US, Savannah is in Georgia. We have a lot of port communities. Ports, goods movement is a huge issue. So you got coastal ports, you have inland ports. So we've been working in Savannah because the ports are expanding. So again, the ports are expanding, you have more goods coming into the US, you're gonna have more diesel truck traffic, more black carbon, right? You have more particulate matter, you're gonna have more VOCs. This community that we work with, Harambe House in Western Savannah, they're also having issues with paper mills. So what happens is when you have industrial corridors, right, it's just not the goods movement, it's just not the port, it's the surrounding infrastructure that's built around those peripheral industries that are built there. So it's more toxic pollution emitting facilities that get concentrated in the same area. And this area is primarily black, primarily low wealth. So we've been doing that work for about 2 years. We're also working in rural areas. So we've been working in Uniontown, Alabama, since about late 2018 as well. What was that 2019? I'm getting confused, 2018, 2019. So in this community, Uniontown is a community that's near Selma. For those of you who know your history and recent history, John Lewis, Pettus Bridge, Selma, Alabama, civil rights movement. Some of you from around the world may not be familiar with this. The U.S. civil rights movement is very important, and the movement for Black lives, or the Black Lives Matter movement, is sort of like a child of that movement. Selma is 20 miles away from Uniontown. Uniontown's community with a per capita income is about $12,000 per year. They have this mountain that you see in the front is not a mountain, it's a landfill that takes in trash from about 35 states. They also take in hazardous waste. So they take in coal ash. So that first picture in the top left is 4 million tons of coal ash. Okay. They also do not have, they have a cheese plant, a cheese effluent that's been sprayed on fields. They have a catfish feed mill, and catfish ponds are very, dangerous when you think about environmental health. And then when you flush your toilet, in many parts of the world, flush your toilet, some parts you don't. So this example may not work in other parts of the world. But in the US, usually when you flush your toilet, the waste goes to a treatment plant. In this context, when they flush your toilet, the waste goes to a containment pond and it gets sprayed on the ground. So human waste has been sprayed on the ground. So we've been working there to, again, hyperlocal air quality monitoring network. And that's been something that's important to give them data, again, on particulate matter and using purple air sensors as well. We've done some work in Curtis Bay. So Curtis Bay is another one of those goods movement communities in Baltimore. And just real quickly on Curtis Bay, they have a medical waste incinerator, a solid waste incinerator, primarily working class, white, Black, Latinx community. They was gonna build another incinerator, the largest trash incinerator in the country, called Energy Answers. We helped do some air quality monitoring with the Environmental Integrity Project. And this young lady, Destiny Watford, was able to organize a community using some of that data and other information to block this incinerator. So just gets the power of people, and again, the power of community-driven science. We've also done work in Brandywine, Maryland. Brandywine is an unincorporated community in Prince County. It doesn't have any town representatives, doesn't have town council. They have several power plants that have been built in that community. They have sludge lagoons, Superfund sites, some of the usual hazards when you think about environmental justice. And they also have a Coal Ash Landfill, which is about the only park in the community. So we've done some air quality monitoring near that community as well. We've done some work in Bladensburg, Maryland, real quickly, so run out of time. Historic Black Church is about 40 feet from this concrete plant, less than 40 feet. And students in lab previously did work, Rosemary did some work to do monitoring using low-cost sensors in this area, this community as well, and found very high levels of particulate matter. So you got the concrete dust itself and also industrial traffic close to the concrete plant. And then lastly, because I'm running out of breath, we also done work in Charleston, South Carolina. Been working in Charleston since about 2007. Another goods moving community. So you got ships coming in, bringing in traffic. You got industrial truck traffic, goods on rails. So they've expanded the Port of Charleston. We've done work in these community partners, the low country line model communities. And we've done work to measure particulate matter, PM 2.5, PM10, and also we're helping to build a low cost system network in that community too. And just real quickly, I got to skip through this, so many slides. Really important work to help translate data to action. So as part of this work, we created a new community group. We shut down the county's incinerator. They've used the data to change zoning. They use the data for mitigation agreements with the Port Authority and also with Palmetto Rail. They're using the data to really do community resilience work. And so I just showed you a lot of quick examples, but I want to end because I'm over time. Thank you. Please stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Wilson? If you do, please use the Q&A chat box and we'll be able to facilitate your questions.
Sorry, I'm a fast talker. Too many slides.
So one question, Dr. Wilson, from the participants is that, are you looking at legislation to advance your work?
Yes, thank you. Great question. I made that point several times about translating to action. So part of what we're doing, I do work in different ways on legislation. So one project that's emerging, one of the big issues in Maryland is industrial chicken farms. So we have a new project to actually do air quality monitoring around industrial chicken farms. We want to provide data to support a act that hasn't passed called the Healthy Community Air Act. So that's one way. Maryland, we've tried to pass cumulative impacts bills. So one thing about the environmental justice I mentioned real quickly, communities have multiple hazards. So you have to understand the cumulative impacts of those hazards. So what happens with permitting, it happens like, hey, well, there's no other facilities already there. So permitting happens in a vacuum. That's not the reality of EJ communities. So we want to get a cumulative impacts bill passed. One just got recently passed a month ago in New Jersey. So the idea would be some of this data could go to inform the new cumulative impacts bill. And we're also engaging multiple delegates in the state of Maryland. And we're also engaging county council members around the issues in Brandywine, around the issues in Bladensburg, to try to change zoning and ordinances, et cetera. So we're working at the county level, we're working at the state level, and I'm also on the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And NEJAC provides recommendations to the EPA on EJ issues. So at the federal level, we've also written a report about the need for more air quality, citizen science or community-driven air quality monitoring at the federal level. So I'm working at multiple levels on legislation and also policy.
Great, thank you. Another question from the participants. Dr. Wilson, do you have state or local air quality management districts that you're working with?
So this is different. So in California, you have air quality monitoring districts, which would be great to have an airshed approach in Maryland. We don't have the similar kind of airshed approach in Maryland. So in Maryland right now, I've done some work with our county's Department of Environment. I'm on the Prince George's County EJ Commission. So some of these issues around air quality, some of the things I brought up have been raised and been put in reports with the Department of Environment, which is the chair for the EJ Commission. We are also doing work with St. Mary's County, which I didn't get to. I do a lot of work on air quality. So St. Mary's County has been very interested in doing air quality monitoring. So over the last month, we've been engaging with the health department director to help them build a county-wide air quality monitoring network in St. Mary's County, partially because a lot of children, they have a lot of kids with asthma, particularly in low wealth areas. But because of COVID-19, they've been exposed to more indoor air pollution triggers. So we're helping them to build an ambient monitoring network for PM and ozone, and also to look at pollution levels inside homes too. So that's where we're doing some work. That's not an air quality district, but it's a county, a county unit.
Great, thank you. And final question, fascinating and passionate presentation. Just wondering if you have any issues with low-cost sensor data, even after co-location data being policymakers.
Oh yeah, no, we love them, but they don't always work well, right? So of course, there's always issues with low cost systems, right? There's drift issues, there's calibration issues, right? And so even probably the bigger issue is it's the acceptability of the data. Right now in the U.S., the gold standard data that's used for permitting, regulations, enforcement is data collected by federal reference method monitors, right? So in many cases, we haven't had the adoption of the low cost sensor data yet. So what we're trying to do a better job is making sure that we have strong QAPs, quality assurance, quality control plans to go along with that, because no data is infallible, y'all, whether it be government data, whether it be industry data. And so I think the QAP, having a strong QAP, having strong QA, QC can help with that, right? But in addition, what I think is important is with low cost sensor data is to make sure that the companies who are developing the sensors are also developing more low cost FRMs and FEMs. We need to bring all of those down. I think once we are able to do that, we can have more hyper-local, more, more granular neighborhood level air quality monitoring networks that can be community driven and community operated. So I think that's probably the bigger issue is the ease of use is there, but the full applications that we need to have and the communities I work in right now, work with, they're not as. Hopefully y'all heard me. I'm done. Hopefully you heard me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, you're but we could hear you fine.
Yeah. Okay,
thank
cool.
you so much, Dr. Wilson. Really appreciate your presentation, and thank you for answering the questions from the participants. Before I introduce the next speaker, I do want to mention that one of our speakers, Chege James, unfortunately may not be able to join us. And given this, just wanted to flag that there may be a couple more minutes per presentation, as well as some additional questions that we may be able to field for the speakers moving forward. Our next speaker is Azjargal Sogtsahan. She leads the Breathe Mongolia Clean Air Coalition, team members from 9 countries to fight air pollution in Mongolia. She is also a climate reality leader and an anti-human trafficking and child abuse activist. When not doing nonprofit work, she works at IBM as an analyst in New York City. Azjargal.
Hello, everyone. You can call me Aza. I'm sure I'm the person with the longest name here. It might be difficult to remember. And I also want to acknowledge the indigenous land I am on. I'm not in New York City right now due to COVID. I'm in Michigan, Ann Arbor. So the land I'm on belongs to Anishinabek and Wyandot people. So respect to the native people. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. That was artwork made by Hisko. He's a Mongolian Australian artist. All right, so our organization is called Breathe Mongolia Clean Air Coalition. You can find us online on social media and website, and we're a tech nonprofit. We are on a mission to equip people to take action to end air pollution in our country. We started as a protest, first of all in Times Square in New York City a few years ago, and then the protest spread to other countries outside of Mongolia, and then we ended up becoming a tech nonprofit with team members from 9 countries. Our team members consist of different activists, scientists, UX designers, developers, researchers, and analysts. I just want to move this. Yeah, okay. Okay, so what we do is we're all about taking action. Obviously, just like Dr. Wilson said, public awareness education is the foundation of this work, right? The public is not aware, they're not demanding the right actions from decision makers. So the foundation is educating the public, both in Mongolia and outside of Mongolia, so people can take collective action and put pressure from different angles. And also we want to foster collaboration, facilitate knowledge and expertise exchange on our digital platform. Our platform is both Mongolian and English. And we also conduct watchdog and monitoring work on the government provided pollution data and all the different decisions and policies and implementation, and communicate that information to the public and also evaluate them on their end. And some of you might know about how bad the pollution is. Our country is the 19th largest country in the world, but we're the least dense populated country. However, we're the most polluted country, not only in terms of air, but also soil and water as well. And this is our lovely capital city with its winter inversion, similar to Salt Lake City. And if you can see through this smog, you can see how bad the particulate matters or the pollution levels can be. And given the health status of our population, we're at very high risk of all kinds of health issues. The number 1 killer is cardiovascular disease in our country. Everyone over 35 is at risk. And you can see that pollution plays a big role into it. One of our team members' mother, she's a little over 40. She's not even overweight. She's healthy. But when she moved from the States to Mongolia, she had a heart attack. She had a stroke. And this is where my little nephew was born 2 years ago. And I had to bring air purifier from my home because I couldn't breathe in his labor room where he was being born. And in the corner, this is the indoor air pollution of maternal and children's hospital in Mongolia. So imagine, taking your first breath when you're born as a human being and you're breathing a packet of cigarette. This is how bad it can be. Half the country lives in this ugly valley. And this valley only makes only like 0.3% of the entire territory. So of 3 million people, half of them live here, and half of them are under 25. So very young population. We don't live long. Only 3 to 4% of our population is over 65. So you can see that pollution can play a huge role in our longevity and the quality of life. It's not only a capital city problem, it's obviously an urban problem. Sometimes when we think of Mongolia, we think of like crisp, fresh air, middle of nowhere, green grasslands and steppe, but 73% of the population lives in urban area, and this is the province center, Arkhanga province center, Arahir, in the winter. And wherever there is a cluster of people, we turn to our cheapest fuel, coal, and we suffocate in it. If you look at indoor air quality, this is classrooms, gym classes and playgrounds. You can see how bad the air can be as well. And I don't need to go into details of, the health impact. Dr. Wilson talked elaborately on it. And as you all know, it's not a simple issue, right? It's pretty complex. It has all kinds of moving parts. This is an image from a 2019 UNDP report, and these are all the different moving pieces of contributors to the pollution, the impact, all the different interventions and solutions. And a lot has to be done on all levels, on citizens, private, public sector, government decision makers, civil society organizations. Everyone has to do something simultaneously, and not one action is more important than the other. So if we look at what is really being, a major bottleneck in having our country solve this problem, is at the foundation, like I said before, it's general awareness and knowledge, general awareness of the systemic issue, right? They think like people who live in a grid district or traditional homes that are not connected to the grid, that are burning coal, are the problem, but that this is not so. It's a socioeconomic, urban infrastructure, developmental challenge. And people are not aware of the complexity and the role they play in becoming the source of pollution, or also the solution to the pollution. And secondly, people, different groups on all level are taking action. They're trying really hard. They've tried really hard over the years, but they've worked mostly in silos, and their capacity is also insufficient. So not only the public needs to be educated, the professionals making the decisions, implementing different projects, they need to also improve their capacity and their expertise in technology, the science, social behavior, everything that comes with this, right? And then thirdly, we have many beautiful legislations and policies. Some of them are not so beautiful. They're quite weak and incoherent. So we have to up our game in terms of establishing policies that are measurable, that are realistic and actionable, that has the proper financing and they're implementable, and also that the people who are implementing those policies need to be held accountable. There has to be proper accountability system and ownership as well. And the consequence of these major underlying issues is obviously there's a major brain drain, and we know about how it impacts the young generation, the cognitive health, right? And it's costing us millions of dollars and more. Just a quick poll we did on Facebook. We asked people if a lot of young families do not want to raise their children in Mongolia, and air pollution is one of them. Given that pneumonia is #2 killer of children under 5 in Mongolia, I am not surprised. So with our organization, it started as a protest, right? And we were just concerned citizens with different backgrounds and different professional expertise, and we saw this, we saw the consequences of it and decided not to sit and be quiet about it or be apathetic and resigned about it. So we started taking action. One of them was that we collaborated with the investigative journalists of Mongolia. When the government back early last year said that pollution went down 50%, but nothing has changed. And we started to, double check where the data is coming from or where the story is coming from. So we deployed low-cost sensors, and we compared them against our government stations. And you can see that a lot of the data is missing, and they're just showing like fresh, clean air just because the data is missing in those sensors. And we wrote an article on data journalism and told the public that do not be misled, right? So a lot of these stations are old, they're not maintained well, And now they no longer show physical values. They only show AQI numbers for different pollutants. And obviously, if data is missing, especially like particulate matter data is missing, the AQI numbers won't be as enlightening or effective to the public. Another issue is that the way we communicate health air quality data to the public is that we do not focus on health impact at all. We say, oh, this is, you know, the pollution is good, bad, or really bad, or extremely bad. This is the level of, this is what we communicate. But, you know, as you know, US or other countries, they say it's hazardous, it's very unhealthy, you know? So that's one thing we really have to improve on. And also you can see that, you know, the hazardous level starts all the way from 400, right, instead of 300. So I think we need to adhere to the international standard and international best practices and focus really on health impact, because right now our citizens think that, you know, if their kid gets bronchitis or pneumonia, they blame the air pollution. But if they themselves have a stroke or heart disease or heart attack or high blood pressure, they don't connect it to air pollution. They're just not educated on the other health impacts on the entire body system. So our challenge is that we don't have the physical raw data anymore. We have to buy it from the government. And even when it's presented to the public, it's not physical value, it's AQI. Which its formula has been changed. We used to show, you know, 1 hour averages, but now we changed it to 3 hour rounding averages. This was done by Robert Ritz, a data scientist in Mongolia, and you can see the peaks have gone down, you know, which means that the AQI calculation is going to be much lower with the denominators changing as well. So these are some issues with our data in Mongolia, and I'll show you a quick demo of what we are doing about it. We built a bilingual platform, breathemongolia.org, and we made our own map from scratch. And we have our own low-cost sensors that have been insulated enough to withstand the cold weather in Mongolia. And we wanted to make sure that when Mongolian public, you know, looks at the health air quality data, they always understand the health impact, right? And they also have something to do. Like, we want to communicate actionable information to the public. And we also want to show people how we rank in the world, because we're so used to breathing this toxic air from 7 to 8 months out of the year. We think it's just a normal everyday life, and there's nothing wrong with it because it's the norm. We don't know any better. So we want to make sure that they get that we already rank number 18 in the world, but soon enough we'll be number 1 and 2 in a month or two. So, and then we put resources and dashboards, you know, and we are even building more educational materials, interactive and educational materials down the road. So our approach is that we want everyone to take action. We want to monitor and collect data, not only air pollution data, but health data, socioeconomic data, right? Everything, all the data that has to support and evaluate policy decisions. And we want to create a localized central hub in both languages to bridge the gap between language barriers. If there's a research in English that is super important, we translate it into Mongolian. If there's a research in Mongolian, like for example, we translated the National Statistics Committee air pollution report into English. We would peer review or edit the other nonprofits' educational materials, and we would work with artists to raise awareness within the country and outside the country, as you saw from the first video. And then, so it's all about collaboration, and we should no longer work in silos. We should no longer be ignorant and apathetic and be used to breathing, a packet of cigarette every day. It's no longer acceptable. Otherwise, we will have to say goodbye to our children and our parents much sooner than we are planning to. So we must not tolerate this. So bottom line is that education is the key, and actionable information, actionable education, not just like empty words and lectures, but we want to drive people to action, whether it's buying filter or buying masks, or whether they're resisting buying old cars. It's all about action. And then also we need more than just air quality data. We want to show that, last year, all the children, all the 70% all the illnesses, like 17% of them were respiratory illnesses, and like 70% of those people who had to be hospitalized for respiratory illnesses were children under 5. People have to know how bad it is, especially for their children. And science journalism, science education is quite new in Mongolia compared to other countries. So we need to really improve the capacity and train science journalists, investigative journalists, and improve our skills in terms of science education, and really learn like what, follow the best practices in doing environmental and public health justice work. So even though I am not an expert like Dr. Wilson, I built a team of experts who know how to do it, and we're providing the platform. And instead of all these experts being stressed out in their homes, not being able to do things on their own, we're bringing them together so they can collaborate and, create a synergetic effect to cause a real change in our country. So that's about it. And if anybody's interested in working with us, we need experts in all fields to do this work.
Great, thank you so much, Azza, for your presentation. We have questions from the participants. One question is there a larger infrastructure issue that needs to be addressed if heating over the winter months are an ubiquitous source of fine particulate pollution? This seems to be a recurring issue in many countries across the globe with air quality issues like Poland.
Right, obviously air pollution is not a single source issue, right? It's obviously an urban structure issue. And with our cities, they're like, even especially for the capital city, it was built only for 500,000 people, but 3 times bigger population lives in there. So we have not been managing urban migration properly. We have not been expanding according to how things should be. So now we have all these people who are not connected to the grid, establishing their homes wherever they want and burning whatever they can find to survive minus 40 degrees winter. So it's definitely an urban structure problem. Even within the city, when we build a new establishment, we do not consult with professionals. We do not adhere to standards, and it blocks the airway within the city as well. We just build buildings wherever we want. And then we often have electricity, power, or water outages. So it's definitely an urban issue. And sometimes we come up with this crazy idea saying like, oh, we'll blow up the mountain so that we'll get like nice wind and get rid of the inversion. Or we'll say, oh, we'll move the entire capital city into a brand new city and move all the universities. Like, we can't do that overnight, right? So I think what's most important is that, just like Dr. Wilson said, that when the local residents are educated on this issue, they're the ones who can oppose unauthorized construction. They're the ones who can demand their leaders to do the right thing. Until that happens, that it's super difficult. to just rely from changes top down.
Thank you. One other question, are policymakers in Mongolia making plans to move away from coal? Are scrubbers used in coal plants and
moving away from coal is quite difficult because we have like 10% of world's coal reserve, and it's our major economic driver. It's our major import, right? So we're not that keen to move away from coal, at least in terms of like power plant, and getting our energy from renewable is obviously very highly advised by all the international organizations. We signed the Paris Agreement. On paper, we want to increase our capacity of renewable energy, but in reality, we're just super slow. Even the barrier to enter and develop the renewable energy sector has all kinds of bureaucratic issues that are not being removed, and international organizations and the private sectors are working really hard to overcome those obstacles. But the first move definitely should be that people should stop burning coal in their homes, and they should at least get connected to the grid, right? But that's not the solution. It's only like one step in bettering the situation, because we're still burning coal in power plants, and they want to keep building power plants. They don't want to stop, unfortunately. And power plants are also used in the mining sector. Mining industry is not so keen to use renewable energy, and they use lots of resources, water, coal, and they pollute their local areas too. So unfortunately, I don't think not enough people want to move away from coal soon enough. And again, we have to educate the public on the impact of being dependent on coal, both economically and also when it comes to environmental safety, right? It's not wise to depend on one source of income, and especially on the mining sector. It's a sector that does not branch out other sectors and does not bring prosperity in the long term.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate your presentation and for answering the questions. I do want to flag also, this is to Dr. Wilson and also Azza and also the other panelists as well. There are some additional questions in the Q&A chat box. So if you're able to type in answers directly to those questions, that would be great, just given the limited time we have for live Q&A. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Jacob Crane. Jacob has spent several Indigenous community on the executive level for the past chief, and has 7 years of experience in the Indigenous realm, ranging from executive assistant, youth program manager, to renewable energy project manager for his First Nation community. In the past, he has also participated on a national level as a 2017 youth panelist for the Council for the Advancement of Native Development Officer, CANDO, and he is a graduate of the Sasko Seiko Aboriginal Youth Entrepreneurship Program. In 2019, Jacob was a recipient of the Running Strong for American Indian Youth, Billy Mills Dream Starter Entrepreneur, $10,000 grant for his work with the Arrow Journey. On his free time, Jacob manages an online series called The Arrow's Journey, which features young, successful Indigenous people in hopes of inspiring the next generation through. Jacob is also an active board member for the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake City and is the executive director of the SLC Air Protectors, two nonprofit organizations dedicated to serving Indigenous peoples in the state of Utah. Jacob?
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. It's interesting to be a part of this panel. This is the first time that I've ever been, invited to a multicultural event like this. So I'm really honored and to be here. And I also want to do a land acknowledgement to the Ute tribe, the Northern Ute tribe. This is their traditional territory. I'm currently in Salt Lake City. Usually I'm in the Navajo Nation. And so it's interesting to see, and I'm really happy that everybody's doing land shout outs. Like, that's really cool that you've incorporated this into the panel. So I know that there's like 64 people watching, so make sure you guys continue that. I think that's really cool. That makes us feel very special. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with everybody. So just go ahead, give me 1 second. So we are the SLC Air Protectors. It's a local nonprofit out of Salt Lake City, but it's also Indigenous led. And so what does that mean to be an Indigenous led organization? So that means from the board of directors all the way down to the executive director and to the staff, the majority of us are Indigenous, local Native Americans within the valley, within the state of Utah. So it's been a fun journey. I'm super new to my position, so I just want to say that right now. I'm not an expert. Actually, we've been focusing heavily on COVID-19 relief efforts within the past 5 months that I've been with the SLC Air Protectors. So without further ado, so air quality, environmental justice. So we all understand why air quality is important. The doctor did a great job at explaining the health issues that come about, and he just blows me out of the water. We'll have to chat later. And the lady from Mongolia, Breve Mongolia, talked a lot about the air quality within her country, but it's very similar to Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City has some of the worst air quality within the country of the United States, but also within the world. So I think we rank number 5. There was a new report that came out, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. I was reading it. I was scamming over, and I think we ranked number 5 for bad air quality, and that's due to smog, and that, similar to what happens in Mongolia. There's the immersion that takes place during the winter months, and so we kind of get trapped in this horrible air quality where it's like you're breathing, a pack of invisible smokes all day long, and you don't understand that you're breathing that in, and so you have a higher rate of bronchitis, asthma happening to our young people, higher chance of getting sick when you're older. And so that happens all the time. And unfortunately, there's a lot of Indigenous people that still live here in these areas. And so we're greatly impacted by that. So of course, we know air quality and environmental justice go together, actually go hand in hand. It's just basically slowing everything down and making sure that we're coming together and working together towards a brighter future for the future generations to come. And so being Native American, we always say that we're looking 7 generations into the future, and that's how we are supposed to make our decisions based on that journey, or that story is looking 7 generations into the future. How is this going to impact our children? How is this going to impact their children and their children's children? And so that's something that, a lot of Native tribes, a lot of Indigenous folks, they make their decisions based on that. And so our organization focuses heavily on garden initiatives. We do some tree planting. I want to get more involved with that because we just haven't been able to do too much of that because we are a little short-staffed due to COVID-19, and a large part of our focus has been to engage with the tribes in the state of Utah. So there's 8 tribes in the state of Utah. There's the Ghost Utes, the Paiutes, the Northern Ute, the Ute Mountain Ute, Confederated Tribes of the Ghost Ute Nation. There's the Shoshone and the Navajo, and I think one more. So forgive me if there's any Indigenous folks watching. I apologize for not acknowledging at this time. But so some of the new initiatives that we've been doing is tree planting. We are looking at sensors and apps. So I'm really interested to see if we can do some app development for garden initiatives. So I'm really excited about that. But something that I've been hearing in and out of this panel is the education, the action education, which I loved, that you mentioned. I can't even say your name, so I apologize, from Brave Mongolia. That was really cool. That's something that we really want to get more involved with, is at an elementary level and middle school level, is getting into the schools and talking to them about air quality, about environmental justice, about making those decisions to take, public transportation versus, the American dream, which is drive around your big truck and just, pollute everything. So some other things that we've been doing is gardening initiatives. So you probably see this. So this is out in the Goshute Reservation, the Confederated Tribes of Goshutes. And so this was something that we kind of helped them establish, was planting their own garden. These hoop houses were vacant for about 3 years. And so we kind of went in there and we restored their garden. So we restored 2 hoop houses during the summer. It was a lot of work, but we loved it. It was volunteer, super cool. Yeah, so that's a lot of the stuff that we've been doing for the tribes within the area. Something that we've also been doing for the past several years is lobbying for change, lobbying our state and House representatives for change at the state capitol, Salt Lake Capitol. A lot of our people will go up there and they'll have demonstrations, of course, but they'll have sit down conversations with some of those representatives about changing the air quality, or what are they doing to progress in making our air quality better in Salt Lake City, because right now it's pretty bad. And so we do a lot of advocacy as well. That's a huge part of our mission as air protectors. That's just all around. It's never going to change. We're always going to be advocating for Indigenous rights, air quality, environmental justice. It's kind of at the core of the SLC Air Protectors mission. So, sorry, I'm going off of the email that I was sent. So, access to data. This is something that is really interesting, because I didn't exactly know where to get the data from when I entered my position, and so a lot of the data, it's good, but some of it is not the best. Kind of like what the Brave Mongolia was talking about. There's different sensors that are out there. Some of it isn't exactly the best, and some of it is more accurate. It's what is the government doing to make a decision, or what is the state doing to provide these resources for us. So finding reliable resources is probably the most important thing. Accurate data is huge. There's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of sensors out there that kind of talk about, what's the air quality like outside, or in the area, or within the, different regions of the state. And so I think that they're doing an okay job as far as that. There's always room for improvement as far as sensors goes. But accurate data also helps with project planning. A large part of our work is we're very action orientated. We do a lot of outreach to the tribes. We do a lot of help locally with tree planting. Some of the things that we're trying to do more of is engage the local community. Our COVID-19 relief work really targeted on the tribal communities within the state. And so now we just have to focus locally a little bit more. And so it's interesting to kind of see all that come together. And so access to better data also includes, better funding opportunities for the organization. And any organization really is just having those accurate numbers to help with that. So that's something that we are kind of planning around and wish to get more involved with. And so kind of like what I was saying is, as far as like community engagement goes, we do a lot of campaigns on our social media. And so you can find us at SLC Air Protectors on our Facebook or our Instagram at SLC Air Protectors. So we have an action network, but then we also have like a regular page. And with our social media. We do a lot of, campaigns, but we also let people know like what we're going to be doing in the fall, in the springtime, the summertime, and how they can get involved. That's kind of our main communication. We do have a website, but I noticed that with young people nowadays and with really anybody, they're going to be on social media. And so that's what we mostly do for community engagement as far as in the local area. But again, we also have those garden initiatives and tree planting initiatives. So part of our gardening initiative was we gave out $200 micro grants to Utahns throughout the state. And so that was really nice because that was a way to get more gardens going. And of course, we want more plants, we want more trees to suck up, the bad air that's going on within the city of Salt Lake City and surrounding cities. And so that's why we kind of target garden initiatives and tree planting initiatives. We do a lot of COVID-19 related, kind of how it was mentioned earlier, just because a lot of the surrounding Indigenous communities have been greatly impacted by COVID-19. There's been a lot of conversation around the Navajo Nation. I'm pretty sure everybody's probably heard about it, but there was about a week and a half ago, just under 10,000 cases of COVID-19 within the Navajo Nation. And so their economies have been greatly impacted by that. And SLC Air Protectors, we've kind of stepped in to help fulfill some of the needs as far as like food boxes go, bringing water down, helping with, community garden initiatives. Those are some of the things that we've been kind of proactively doing. And so it's been really nice to get involved with them in that way, to lend a helping hand. Something else that we do is we have a sovereignty hubs program. And so it's basically a food project. We have garden initiatives going on, but we also have sovereignty hubs. And so they're basically the exact same thing that the organization kind of puts on. Within a neighborhood, we're trying to establish gardens so that people can come and gather and get food from their community gardens. And so we try to do that within the city of Salt Lake City. We try to promote that in a positive way, but also bringing that awareness to growing your own food, kind of stepping away from your traditional going to McDonald's or going to Burger King or going to get fast food. We want people to be healthy. We want people to be growing their own food so that you kind of slow down that fossil fuel burning there. Another way that we engage the community is we have a lot of social events, or we used to. Due to COVID-19, we can't really do that as much, but we're planning a powwow in the spring, which is going to be a social distance powwow. So it's kind of basically taking, I'm not too sure if everybody knows what a powwow is, but it's basically a celebration where tribal communities will come together and they'll dance and sing. And it's kind of like our way of celebration. And so because of COVID-19, there's no more powwows, but I'm trying to set it up so that we have a social distance powwow. But another way that I'm kind of going around it is that I want it to be low waste as well. And so targeting low waste events or having low waste events is kind of bringing about that awareness so that we can keep, the earth, clean. We don't have to, be throwing away trash and it's piling up. That was something that we're kind of working towards, as well as, we just finished running as medicine. It was an Indigenous youth prayer run where we basically prayed for the entire world. We ran 360 miles from Bears Ears National Monument all the way to Salt Lake City. That was kind of our way of bringing awareness to the Bears Ears issue. I'm not too sure if everybody knows what happened there, but that was environmental racism at its finest, where the monument was shrunk. There wasn't really a lot of tribal consultation there, but they kind of just did it. And so we still brought that awareness while bringing prayers and healing to our communities that have been greatly affected by COVID-19. And so I know, right? That's a big semi. But anyways, we've been doing a lot of shipments down on the Navajo Nation for COVID-19 relief. We fed over 3,865 people thus far. So from April all the way to now, we've restored 2 tribal greenhouses for their communities to grow food and to make sure that they can't, they don't have to travel as far. Sometimes on the reservation, people have to travel a long ways. They have to travel 45 minutes and at times an hour just to get to the nearest dollar store to get food. So we want to make sure that they're safe, that everybody's staying safe, and that we're reducing, the carbon emission that's going on. So that's why we kind of bring the food out to them. We've given out 10 $200 micro grants to Utahns for their own gardens, kind of what I was talking about before. We're in the process of developing a garden app, which will hopefully make people or encourage people to shop locally from local farmers, local people that have gardens. It's kind of an interesting concept within itself. But some other things that, that I really want to talk about is just working together collectively to build a better future for the future generations to come. And so doing things that what we're doing right now, coming together, holding a space for all of us to kind of talk and to share resources, to share data, to share our stories of where we come from. This helps bring insight and an understanding to what we're going through as Indigenous, what we're going through as people, what we're going through as, collectively as a world. I think this is really great. And so I'm super excited to be here. This is my first time taking part in a panel like this where we're talking about air quality, we're talking about initiatives, we're talking about data, we're talking about all kinds of things. And so again, I'm super new to my role with Salt Lake City Air Protectors. Short-staffed. A lot of the things that we've been doing has been COVID-19 related for the past 4 months. But going into the fall, we're going to be doing a lot more with sensors, educational tools to kids, more focused on doing more Zoom engagement there versus actually going into the school, just to keep people a little bit more safe and keep people from gathering in large settings. And so kind of something that we want to do and just focus at the core so that, in the future, Utahns will understand, like, let's not buy the truck, or let's not drive around for, just for the heck of it, or let's take public transit, or items like that. I think is at the core of all this, is just re-educating ourselves and getting it to the younger people so that they understand what's happening and what their actions can do to the air quality. And so we want to make sure that it stays positive as much as we can. And so yeah, I think that in my past role, I was with renewable energy. Some of the things that we looked at within my community were, we wanted to structure our communities a little different. We wanted to do more planning as far as before we go and build a building, just to build a building. We wanted to make sure that there was an environment assessment done. We wanted to make sure that it was built with the most environmental friendly materials. Although it was a little bit more expensive, in the long run, it's going to be better for the community. It's going to be better for reducing our carbon footprint on the earth. There's just a lot of there's a lot of possibility, and there's also education going on for building those houses or those communities, buildings, reducing our carbon footprint within our own buildings, like HVAC systems. This could just go on and on and on. And so, anyways, yeah, if anybody has any Q&A for me or any questions regarding COVID-19 relief or what we're doing as a community here in Salt Lake City to kind of reduce that, I'm open to really answering any questions that we might have. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacob, for your presentation. One question from the participants. From your perspective, how can air quality experts, whether at research institutions or government, better engage Indigenous communities?
I think just going out and talking to them, talking to their leadership, maybe even having a presentation to their community as a whole. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult just because of COVID-19, but maybe doing what we're doing right now and having the decision makers available and able to participate, I think that would be huge.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacob.
No problem.
Our next speaker is Abid Omar of Pakistan Air Quality Initiative. Abid has a social mission. How can I improve the environment of Pakistan? He sees the air pollution emergency in Pakistan as a silver lining, an opportunity to drive environmental awareness and change that will clean up Pakistan for good. A key indicator of environmental issues is pollution that affects our daily lives, specifically air pollution. He found, but there's no data to prove this, so he founded the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative to monitor air quality in and across major urban areas of Pakistan and to provide awareness of air quality and air pollution issues, therefore providing an impetus for change. During his, he is in the technical textiles and filtration industry. Abid?
Abid, you're mute.
Abid, you may actually be on mute.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me? So thank you once again for inviting me for this webinar. OpenAQ has been a real inspiration, and I share a very similar ethos that open data has a huge power to drive change. And today in this community series, I'll talk about some of the changes that we have seen in Pakistan thanks to open air quality data. So yeah, a little bit on how we started. I used to live in Beijing, China, back when it was one of the most polluted cities in the world. And you know, living there, you wouldn't know it because there was no government data, there was no access to information. Though the US Embassy started tweeting out every hour open air quality data. And you know, while I lived there, I would speak with people, I'd ask them about this data, and locals in China would say, you know, this can't be true. Look at the sky. It's so nice and foggy today. How beautiful is it? And that would lead me to think about back in my home country in Lahore. It's a very similar scenario that you'd have this crazy levels of so-called fog in the winter months, but nobody was aware. So I actually took a low-cost air quality sensor, the Kaitera laser egg that Az had also showed earlier. And I took it around with me when I was traveling back home, and I went to Lahore, and I was like, okay, you know, here's a snapshot. I know what the air quality is like, but that led me to thinking that we need to do something on a bigger scale. Why don't I set up a Twitter account, same as Beijing Air in, you know, same as the US Embassy network, but lo and behold, with a $20,000, $30,000 price tag, that wasn't really feasible. So and also I wasn't living in Pakistan, so it was very difficult to, you know, how to implement it. So we set up the Pakistan Air Quality Initiative as a community-driven initiative where I, living remotely, reached out to concerned citizens, environmentalists, activists to set up these monitors in their own homes, in their workplaces. And we, immediately the first thing we did, we set up a Twitter feed back in 2016, which is still there today, which puts out hourly readings of air quality data. So yeah, the having open data, as a lot of people have already said, is that it puts a magnifying glass on air pollution. And we don't really want to know the data for the sake of knowing the data. for collecting numbers. We want to do something about having a cleaner environment. We want to use that data to go to the government, to speak with policymakers, officials, to start making a change. And we've seen a lot of progress in Pakistan, where back in 2016, when I started looking in this, there was no air quality data available at all. You could go on the internet, you could search, I mean, which is what everyone does first, and there was really nothing to be found except some very old data dating back to 2008, 2009, which were a few weeks of studies done in various science papers. But there was no recent data, there was no open data, the government was not monitoring data. Pakistan was essentially like a black hole when it comes to knowing about air quality. So our low-cost air quality sensors kind of put air quality data on the map. And in the beginning, when I would speak with people, who weren't really aware, with the media, journalists, policymakers, they all said, look, air pollution isn't a problem. Then I'd show them the data and I'd get the response, but this is not so bad. We can only write about it until it becomes breaking news. And I see in Ulaanbaatar, you have regularly levels above 3,000 concentration of PM 2.5. In Lahore, we crossed 1,000 back in 2017, and that's when the New York Times wrote about it and kind of broke the story, and the local media then started picking up from there. So at that point, we had about a dozen monitors across the country. Today, we have about 40 monitors. In the beginning, the initial few monitors were self-funded by myself and friends and family. Later, we had other people coming forward, and even today, we don't have that many monitors, but the few monitors that we do have across the country have made this tremendous impact. So coming back to kind of the open AQ ethos of what is the criteria for air quality data that can be considered open. So on the right, you can see just today what the Punjab Environmental Protection Department's website looks like, where you can access the data. So you can go to every month, you can click on one of these months, and you can find a PDF that looks like this, which shows you the data. Now, we can see that it meets one of the 4 key criteria, that the data is reported in a physical number, that it's not an AQI. But when I look at the 2.6 PM 2.5 that they've reported, it's an unbelievable number. We don't get such good air quality data in Lahore, where this data is from. Also, we have no idea where these stations are located. There's no concept of being real time. It's ad hoc. Sometimes they might report from one station. Sometimes it'll be an 8-hour average. Sometimes there'll be no data. So it's also quite unreliable, and a lot of citizens and media have questioned the quality and validity of that data. So we look now at a slide that shows you what the government did report. Oh, by the way, it's very important to note that the only reason the government started reporting this data was because there was a case running in the Lahore High Court, which started in 2016. I wasn't aware of it until much later. And the case was about the high levels of smog in Lahore. And every time they had a hearing, it would not go anywhere, because the judge would say, look, where is the data? You're telling me that the air is bad. And here I have the Environmental Protection Department telling me, no, the air is not bad, but I have no numbers to look at. So the lawyer actually got in touch with me, and I provided the data, and they printed out the data in raw form. It wasn't any fancy graphs or charts back then. And they took it to the court, showed the data, and overnight the conversation changed, where the court mandated the Environmental Protection Department that they have to monitor in real time, and they have to provide the data in a form available to the public, which is what triggered this website and these PDF reports that come out there to begin with. So now at this chart, we're looking at last year's data, which is a green line, where even the government reports 124 micrograms per cubic meter of PM 2.5, which is the annual average. So you can easily imagine that in the winter months, it's much higher. We're looking at ranges of 150, 200. In the summer months, it tends to be much lower, closer to 50. All of these numbers are well above safe limits as defined by the World Health Organization, and also well above safe limits as defined by local laws. So we did some comparison. How does this data look with the low-cost air visual monitors that we're using, which is the green line, which is now, sorry, the orange line, where we show that the data that we report is slightly higher at 151 micrograms per cubic meter. And a lot of people would tell us, look, you're always reporting much higher values, and there's no way that you can validate the data that you're talking about. So what proof that you have that your numbers carry some truth to them. And one of the things that we had been advocating for years as a citizens group was that we need to get some reference standard equipment in Pakistan. And finally, the US State Department stepped up thanks to its diplomatic missions here and the Air Now program. In April 2019, they had 4 monitors running in Pakistan, in Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad, and Peshawar. And so looking at the data for Lahore, we saw that the US consulate reported 201 micrograms, so an even higher number, which kind of helped us to say, look, this is what the government is saying, this is what we're saying, but look, these reference standard monitors that are properly validated and calibrated and all of that are showing something even higher. So we do have a problem in Pakistan. And again, the problem is not the data. The problem is, what can we do to look for solutions? So yeah, and exactly how bad is it? That Lahore smog has been called the 5th season of smog, with only 10 hours of good air quality in 2019. So that's based on the data we were just looking at. So 10 hours that were below 10 micrograms per cubic meter in the entire year. So yeah, some of the big successes that we had, that reaching out, myself and other activists and this group of mothers who came on board, they call themselves the Scary Mothers. It's an advocacy group based out of Lahore, who and everyone was reaching out to their local government officials, to ministers from the Environmental Protection Departments, to the Health Ministry, to the Education Ministry. And we managed to get the ear of the Prime Minister, and also managed to get to the state where we convinced the government that the root cause of the problem, which by the way is what we is our best guess speculation, is the poor fuel quality available in Pakistan, meaning the fuel used in our cars and transportation, namely petrol and diesel. We were till recently at a standard which was from the 1950s. It was supposed to be Euro 2 standards, but various tests that had been done by independent bodies showed that it was much, much worse, with very elevated levels of manganese and other heavy metals. So we managed to convince policymakers that it is the fuel standards that have to be upgraded. In November 2019, the Prime Minister gave a speech addressing the topic of air pollution. And basically, it's like a wish list of all the things that we wanted to happen: upgrading fuel standards, having a electric vehicles policy, looking into alternatives for crop burning, upgrading brick kilns, installing scrubbers in the major emitters, and well, also planting more trees. So down here, you just see a headline from last week that as of this summer, we start seeing Euro 5 petrol and diesel being available at the gas stations in Pakistan. So that is a major success. So as a community group, we are not a nonprofit, we are not a company, we're not registered, we're really just individuals, different groups of people, a very vast network just interested in this area and putting in the time that we've managed to make air quality a national priority. And we've done this by communicating air quality data. We've done this by hosting a lot of workshops and trainings and reaching out to people in many different forums. So, and it's also important to add is that it's a lesson that anyone can learn, that there's so much that you can do with this simple data. So what next? Well, this wish list has been there since we kind of started, that we've been using these low-cost monitors. That we need more capacity building through technical exchanges. Part of it is like participating in such webinars, talking to other experts, learning from their experiences in terms of how to manage a low-cost network, how to make sure the data is good enough. We also are looking for funding, not for us as an organization, because again, we're a network of individuals, but we want funding to go to established institutions, universities, who otherwise would not be working in air pollution areas to, I think once there is a possibility of funding, you could convince a lot of people to work in this. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was hardly anyone working in air pollution. And today you see increasingly a larger and larger number of researchers and scientists joining this every day. We also want to see more happening from remote sensing data, because there's a huge possibilities. There's only, similarly to the arguments for low-cost sensors, there's a big argument to have remote sensing because you can't reach all the remote areas. These low-cost sensors only work in the cities where you have electricity, where you have data availability. But if you're in the desert or in the countryside where there is a very sparse population, it's very difficult to have an online system. Another wish list that if somebody from the State Department is listening to this, that we'd love to co-locate some of our monitors with the reference standard equipment that is now available in Pakistan. And of course, we'd love to travel when possible post COVID, maybe in another year or two, and actually meet some of you in person and learn and exchange ideas. And again, it's not just for me. We want to have our whole air quality community across Pakistan to be able to do all of these things. So we need to look once again very briefly at the data, is that, when you're in other parts of the world, like in Salt Lake City, and you talk about air pollution, yes, you have an air pollution problem, but look at this chart. For all the major cities in Pakistan, none of them have any good air days. That's the blue line on top, except Karachi had 3 days where the average air quality was considered good by US air quality standards. The rest of the days, approximately half the year in all of these cities, you're at unhealthy to hazardous levels of air pollution. So it is a big problem. We must not forget why we're working on this. This is a health issue. It's not a data issue. It's about providing people better quality of life. It's about mitigating the economic impacts of the health issues and so forth. Some of the ways we've been communicating is doing things like these barcodes inspired by the climate stripes, where each line represents one day of the year, going from blue being a good air day, red being a bad air day, and you see how different it is in the different cities. Islamabad is considered to be a very clean, green city, but in fact, even over here, when you see a lot of blue, but even Islamabad, on average, air quality is well above WHO safe limits. 135,000 deaths per year are attributed to ambient air pollution in Pakistan, and we haven't even addressed the issue of indoor air pollution and cook stoves yet, but it's a vast field. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot to learn. And with that, thank you so much for having me on board.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Abid. We have a question from the participants. Have health workers in Pakistan raised the alarm? I would imagine that they'd observe high rates of respiratory illnesses. How is health incorporated into environmental justice advocacy in Pakistan?
We did one study together with the Indus Hospital in Karachi, where they correlated hospital admission rates with air pollution levels. The study is not yet published, but we hope it's going to be published in a couple of months. And it's a direct correlation. And they didn't just look at hospital admission rates, but they also looked at what the patients were complaining about. Is it respiratory issues, or is it some other issues? So, filtering the data. There was another study done when we presented at the National Assembly of Pakistan by the Children's Hospital in Lahore. It's the largest children's hospital in Pakistan. And they had also, when they were asked to present and talk about health impacts, they were very surprised because at that point they did not know that every time the air pollution goes up, like if you chart the two, it's like a direct correlation with health issues. Similarly, we've had some doctors speak out and, try to become champions of this cause, but we don't really have any health practitioners in Pakistan who are real champions, like you have Dr. Kumar from the Lung Health Foundation in India. We need a lot more health practitioners to join this cause, not just in Pakistan, but globally.
Great, thank you so much, Abid. Our final speaker is Antonio Garcia of CitySense. Antonio is an industrial civil engineer by training. In 2012, he co-founded Cowork Latam, currently one of the most important flexible office actors in Latin America, with more than 30 spaces in 4 countries. In 2008, motivated by reversing the problem of air pollution in Santiago, he founded CitySense Co. Currently, CitySense is a network of urban satellites that provide services for the IoT industry and smart cities. Sensors and communication systems open to the community of creators. Solutions for the environment, security, logistics, marketing, and smart governments have been developed in CitySense, and Antonio is also an Endeavor entrepreneur since 2019. Antonio?
Thank you, Chisato. And thank you all for having here. I'm going to share my screen. And the idea is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our story and how everything began actually working on air pollution, and then migrate a little bit. And I hope this can be helpful for all of us here. As you may know, and we have been hearing from people from all around the world, air pollution is something that is not just for important cities like LA or other cities in the world, but this is a picture of Santiago, for example. I promise you, this is the capital of Chile. And also in winter, as we have been hearing a lot already, air pollution is a critical thing because of the inversion and because it's also a valley. So we start working on this problem, and we learned that people think that air pollution is something that you can't evade, and it's something that they are already so they are living with it for so long that they think it's something that it's just happening. It's like traffic, or just like something that is there. And they think that the air pollution is something that is covering the whole city as a whole, and there's something that you can escape from it. And this is something that we have to change in terms of the people's mentality. And what we can see is that air pollution is something very dynamic and is changing from block to block. We have been measuring air pollution levels, and sometimes you have in one corner X PM 2.5, and one block to the north or in another direction, you have twice the same the concentration. And it's changing minute by minute. It's not something that is with like long cycles. It's changing and moving. So if we could see the air we breathe, it would be like water. If you go to your kitchen and you open your tap water and the water is brown, it's impossible that you are going to breathe it. because you are seeing that it's very unhealthy. And we think that if we are able to show people how the air is in real time, maybe people, because they are unable to stop breathing, they are going to start acting and having more conscience about the problem. So we think that the problem starts with, of course, we have few sensors per city. A city like Santiago, for example, it only has 10 air pollution sensors from the government. The other problem for us, and this is something that is repeating in every city in the world, important city in the world. Second, information is always not in real time. So you have, for example, in Chile and many parts of the world, they take actions when the moving average of the past 24 hours is over some level, so they act on it. So people is not actually looking real-time data, but it's the 24 average, moving average of the air pollution levels. And the third point for us that is very critical is that most of the times the recommendations are not personalized for people's condition. So it's not the same if you are a healthy 30-year-old man to a 30-year-old pregnant woman or a 80-year-old elder with heart conditions, for example. So everyone reacts to the same level of pollution in a different way. And that's something very important. So we like 5 years ago, we started working on this. So we wanted to multiply by 10 the amount of sensors that we have in Santiago. We wanted to show this information in real time to the population through a mobile and web app. But also we wanted to give recommendations in real time accordingly the different conditions of the citizens. But the result was that we actually started with a $50,000 seed capital, and we crashed with the reality that no one wanted to pay for it. And the government was the worst of all. They said, for example, we are never going to use your information that comes from these low-cost sensors. So for there we really understood, that you have two different dimensions of people that is trying to work on this. You have the scientific, like very, they're looking for very high quality data, and the sensors must be in a perfect shape, and they have to be calibrated and certified. And they don't care if they only have one sensor that has all of that things. And if you have 100 sensors, but they have over 90% of correlation with their own sensors, they don't care. 90% is not enough, and they only want the information from their own sensors. So governments were out of the picture really fast. End users were starting to download the app, and actually there was something interesting there, but not enough in order to create like a change in the government. But we had some brands that were interested in being like the face or like the sponsors of this air pollution network in Santiago. In that moment, we only had like 24 air pollution sensors funded by us. And in 2019, last year, was Crystal Health. Crystal Health is an American health institution. They have like 50 clinics in all Latin America, and they sponsor the network last year. But the interesting thing that happened here, and this is where I want to make my case, is that here there is a problem of infrastructure, of course, of gathering the data, and we found it that it was very difficult to finance only an air pollution sensing network. So the community, when we start showing our case and we start showing our hardware in the city, they start asking us if they could use the same hardware for their own purposes. So we had some other IoT and smart city solutions that they needed that installed infrastructure for the communication systems that they had, for doing some edge computing in the hardware, or for using the data that we were collecting from them. So that's where we changed a little bit our project, and we start realizing that air pollution is just one of the many problems that cities have all around the world. And even that we share those problems. So we were mentioning here how many cities in the world have air pollution problems, that each city is fighting their own agenda and their own solutions, and there's almost non-collaboration between cities to try to tackle the problem in a more powerful way. And the same happens with security, with transport, with coastal floodings, and many other problems. So we start looking on how we could tackle all these problems and gather a community so we can start doing something of large scale. And we figure out that every tech revolution in history needed a critical mass of infrastructure. And in the case of smart cities, for example, for air pollution issue, you don't have that critical mass of infrastructure. So you have some cities with 10 air pollution sensors. One of them are low cost, the other ones are from the government, but they are different calibrations. And you have different situations all around the world. So it's very difficult to gather all of that and do something in a more like high scale. So in order to have this revolution of smart cities, where air pollution, of course, is one of the main issues, we needed to work on a critical mass of infrastructure for smart cities. So that's how Citizens was born. And what we are doing is we are deploying hundreds of what we call urban satellites. These urban satellites, we call them like that because they are a little box that do the same thing that a satellite does in space, that is capturing data and also working as a communication hub. So we install all these urban satellites and we open that infrastructure to the community so they can use all the communication systems and all the data from our sensors for their own projects and their own initiatives. So instead of trying to fund a solution with all the infrastructure with one solution, we can fund the infrastructure with many solutions. So it's a shared infrastructure project. So each urban satellites has integrated IoT communication systems. Everything goes to the cloud. So we have some tools for working with that data and also to connecting their own IoT devices to the data. And of course, in the bottom cap of the urban satellite, we have several environmental sensors. So we have today PM 2.5, PM 10, CO2, VOC, humidity and temperature, and noise. And we have different communication systems from LTE to connect the urban satellite to the cloud. Also, we create local communications network using LoRa, for example, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, and BLE, which is low energy Bluetooth. So after we have covered the city with hundreds of these urban satellites, then a new universe of solutions appear, and then the community can start acting on the problems. And that's where we have to try to work on. I have hearing for all the conference that it's in the power of the people that the things are going to change and to happen. But if the people is unable to scale their solutions, it's very difficult that they are going to start working on it, and it's very difficult that they are going to find funding for their own projects. So imagine if I want to do something and my market is only one city, it's impossible that I'm gonna find the resources to actually develop and deploy that solution. But if I can show that my market is massive and I have the 50 more important cities in the world where I can deploy my solution, then it's more interesting for them and for investors and the community as a whole. So this is very interesting on how we are scaling this network of urban satellites. At the beginning, we start, of course, trying to work with governments. It was very slow, a lot of bureaucracy. And then we realized that there were a lot of companies in the city that they already had a lot of physical presence in the city. So for example, billboards company, gas stations, convenience stores, drugstores, franchises, etc. So we start working on how we can solve them a problem. So we can have a lot of locations where we can install the urban satellites, but at the same time, we can have like a revenue generating product that could help us grow the network in different cities. So we developed two in-house strategic products. The first one is AirMob, which is the one I think is more interesting for this conversation. But the other one is DatMob, that it also is very interesting because I'm going to show you later, but AirMob, of course, is about air pollution, and DatMob is about mobility in the city. So for example, during COVID, because mobility went down, of course, we all know air pollution levels went down in several cities around the world. So how people move around the city is also very important to understand in order to tackle air pollution problems. So AirMob is a free app that is available for Google Play and iTunes Store. And basically it's like a Waze for air pollution. So because we already have in Santiago 185 air pollution sensors, I'm going to show you in a little bit the platform. We have a better understanding on air pollution in real time. So what we do is that we show you all these little dots, which are our urban satellites, but also, for example, you can choose to commute in the city from point A to point B, and the app is going to show you the cleanest route that you can take to move across the city. This is a picture of our sensing network in Santiago, and this was 1 year ago in Santiago. I don't know if you saw it in the news, but we had a lot of riots, and it was like a social explosion here, and we had fires all around the city. So there were barricades, and they burned like 20 subway stations. It was like a huge thing. And this is a real-time picture of air pollution in October in Santiago. When normally in October we have very nice air quality because it's already a spring, and we have more wind, and ventilation is a lot better. So this image was incredible because showing air pollution levels actually showed the scale of the social explosion that we had on that day. This is another excellent example of why it's so important to have that level of sensing in the city. And it doesn't matter if you only have 90% of accuracy, because what we really need is this resolution of the situation in the city. Last year we have this fire. It was a very important fire, and we started looking our platform, and in the near zone of the fire, air pollution levels were actually very good. So we were like very frightened because we thought that our air pollution sensors were not working as they're supposed to work. So here's an image, for example, of that day. So where would you think the fire was on that day? It's from that picture, I would think that it's in downtown where all the red dots are, but actually the fire was over here. So the government actually said that all children around that little dot the red dot that you see over there, their classes were suspended. But we were like, you suspend the classes where the air quality is actually very good, because the plume of the fire went up, and then it went down in downtown, and then it started moving to the north through the wind. As you can see in here in this little picture, I crossed the data from Wind Guru on that day with the fire. So it's very important to have all these little dots and having this real-time sensing so people can actually make their own actions and start protecting themselves. I'm going to show you a little bit the platform. So this is the app. So you have all the different dots is a different urban satellite, and then you have different features like choosing your favorite locations. You can choose your profile, which is for us the most important thing. So for example, you go to live map. This is in Spanish. Sorry for you guys that don't speak Spanish, but here you can choose your profile, in terms of, remember I said that it's very different if you are a pregnant woman or an elder. The air pollution level is going to affect you in a different way. So for example, if I put I do a lot of sports, but I have some breath problems. Now I can see all these all the dots is a sensor in Santiago today, and depending on the color, which means the level of pollution, I will have some different indications. So in this case, I don't have any indications because air pollution is very good in that specific location in the city. But just right here, like a couple of blocks away, air pollution is not that good, and I'm gonna have some cares that I have to take. And here I have a historical data that I can check in this little box, and I can choose like a different time of the year that I want to check for the data. This is open for the public, so anyone can get in here and start looking their neighborhoods and trying to understand how air pollution is changing minute by minute and day by day. Going back to the presentation. So this is the other business case or use case that we are doing with the network of urban satellites. And with this tool, what we do is that we measure mobility, detecting Wi-Fi signals from cell phones in a totally anonymous way, and actually is GDPR compliant because the method that we use is impossible for us to actually have access to personal data from anyone. The only thing that we do is that we listen the Wi-Fi devices that are moving around the city. And with this data, we can actually have mobility and migration patterns through the city that we are willing to start working on to cross this data with air pollution data. So maybe we can start understanding where, for example, the mobility patterns are affecting more air pollution. So maybe governments can actually create more or deepen the strategies of public transport on those migration patterns in order not just to have better transportation system, but also to lower air pollution levels. We have been developing all kind of solutions on top of this platform, but the idea is that with these in-house solutions, we are opening the platform so anyone in the community of creators can start accessing this data, using this infrastructure that we are installing, we are maintaining, and we are operating them, so they can start tackling the problems that their own cities have. But our dream is that they can scale those solutions to other cities in the world, and that's why we're working so hard to scale this urban satellite network, not just in Santiago, but in Mexico, and in the couple of next months in the US. We are working to install some of them in New York, Washington, Boston, Denver, Nashville, and San Francisco. Thank you so much. Any questions, please?
Thank you so much, Antonio. One question from the participants. Do you think if we people of a city create enough political pressure to adapting low-cost sensing air quality solutions, will politicians react appropriately?
Actually, I will love to think that it will, but I don't think so, because that when I have seen that air pollution is something that is not so relevant for the government because it's not creating a short-term like big problem. There are some cities in Santiago where air pollution is so bad that actually is how can I explain is that we don't have riots for air pollution in Santiago, even though we have one of the most polluted cities in the world. And we have riots for different things, but not for air pollution. So even if we have more understanding on the problem and you have a critical mass of people having this data from low cost sensors, I don't think that the government that alone is going to be enough for governments to start acting. I think the problems are more related to health. If they can, like the example for Pakistan, if they can relate health issues, like very short-term health issues with air pollution, then maybe they can start working on it, but not because people is gonna install air pollution sensors in their homes.
Great, thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you so much for all the panelists for all of your presentations. I know that we are over time. It would be amazing if some of you would be able to stay on the line if you're available. If not, and you have other meetings and places to go, completely understand. But we do have two intriguing questions from the participants that we would love to pose to all panelists. Let me share my screen so that you're able to see the questions. The first question is, when talking about low-cost sensors, people seem to be using primarily closed proprietary devices. Is open source, open licensing something anyone is thinking about or concerned with? Whether this is with these devices, but also with publishing this data more openly. Does anybody share their response?
Well, the first challenge when it comes to, say, myself in Pakistan or the Breed Mongolia project is that we really don't have much choice. There are very few companies out there who are making affordable low-cost sensors. There is one open source project running out of Barcelona, the Fab Lab, where everything is open source, from the design of the unit to the software around it and the calibrations and so forth. But it is, even with that open source model, it's much more challenging to work on that, because then you still have to build, it's not just the hardware, it's also the platform in terms of the cloud network and making that data available to people. So there's not really anyone that I know who's doing a complete solution like that. Someone just mentioned Luftdaten in Germany. That is a good example, but somehow hasn't had much international traction.
Do any of the other panelists have any comments?
I'll just say quickly that with the Citizen Science Association, we are very supportive of open source and having open data, but that it depends on the context, right? So we've actually having discussions about when you have open data, and then in the context of environmental justice, because there could be some issues if people, you want to protect folks, and so if you have and there's some sort of IP issues too. So for a community member, if you've been impacted by these issues and it's your community, we have to make sure we get permission to make it open. That's really, really important before that happens. So that's one wrinkle to that. That's the only comment I make. So when it comes to the IP issues and experience of EJ communities, it's been so extractive and so guinea pig and so much scientific racism, colonialism. So the intellectual property issue is a big issue that has to be discussed. We just can't, make it open without really having that engagement, having those conversations with them.
Azad, do you have any comments on this question?
Well, yeah, I think not like when it comes to Mongolia, right? People are, especially those who live in Gir district and who are burning coal, they're barely, concerned about when their next meal comes from, right? And obviously they cannot afford their own family low-cost sensors. So there is definitely a really high demand in the country or the government and all these different stakeholders coming together and making the data available for free. And I think even when the government, when it's supposed to be providing us the data for free and is not doing it, it's super difficult to work with private sectors to have their data open source and available to everyone. And those who have the resources to buy the sensors, they have to choose to make their data available to the public as well. So in an ideal world, we would love to have the same kind of, network that Antonio talked about, and that everyone is doing, whoever can afford the low-cost sensors, they, they install them wherever they can, and they provide the data for their community, for their local community. So we need to have that incentive system, I think, or the proper incentive and the education to make this happen for sure. But when we are investing in the sensors, we obviously want to make it available for everyone. We have access to historical data, but it's so large. We need to build the infrastructure and to afford the storage fees, right, to make it available to the researchers as well. So it costs money. So finance is also an issue too, especially for nonprofits like us.
And it is important to add here that, you know, the purple air and the air visual and the Kythera sensors, which I know are quite common in different countries, with having a low-cost sensor network on a somewhat of a larger scale, none of them are providing their data openly. I know that they do let me access the data because, you know, we're using it for this community project, but if somebody else approaches them, they don't have a platform like OpenAQ. And in fact, I have suggested to OpenAQ that you should speak with all of these platforms and try to integrate their data into the OpenAQ platform. Another thing I want to add is that the cost of these low-cost sensors, the hardware cost is not the main cost. It is rather the cost of the deployment and of the upkeep and of the maintenance.
Right.
I agree with that. Actually, that's why we are working on this shared infrastructure platform. It has to do something more than only sensing air pollution, so it can actually be funded and maintained. And data and data transferring is one of course the main issues. That's why narrowband communications systems here is a very important issue. So we can send the data without the need of having contracts with telecommunication companies that most of the time charge a lot of money. But of course, having as long as we have a lot of solutions working on the same hardware, it's going to be easier to finance and to fund the whole operation.
Yeah, and also human resources is an issue too, right? For our sensors, we need to have a team that would physically maintain and calibrate the devices on a regular basis, and nobody wants to do it. Not many people want to do things for free, so we have to pay those people as well. So we need to build up this entire process and ecosystem.
Anybody else? Jacob, do you have any comments on this question?
No, I think everybody kind of said it, and I would just be repeating some of the things that were said. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And our last question is, what does equity and justice look like in the communities that you're engaged with in your work? And what are some signs of success or indicators that things are indeed moving in the right direction?
I could answer that, but I'd rather pass the mic. I'll talk too long. Somebody else speak.
Well, I already covered some of the success stories in Pakistan, where we went from having zero awareness about air pollution being an issue to being a major topic as of the last winter, with the Prime Minister announcing various initiatives. And in fact, we had a lot of school closures happening for the first time when the pollution levels reached very high limits. That's thanks to the Scary Mothers group and their advocacy work to keep their children safe. So thousands of schools will be shut across Punjab. So, you know, nobody wants schools to be shut down unnecessarily, even though during COVID, we've learned to live with that. But all of these things are a strong message, because, you know, when the child's at home, they're like, why are you home? It's because the air's bad. So you strike up a whole new series of conversations that you otherwise don't have. It's like, you don't go outside and play because the air is bad, you wear a mask, you take various precautions. So I think these small hazardous indicators are in a way a sign of success, but the real success would be when all these policies that I mentioned that, you know, they've been announced, when they're actually implemented and in place, and we start to seeing cleaner skies. In fact, I was once saying that poor air quality is a sign of poor governance. If we fix the political issues around, you know, environmental issues, then everything else will be moving in the right direction. So the data does help us drive that.
I'll chime in real quick. Oh, go ahead. I'll chime in after.
Oh, okay, sure. So in terms of Mongolia, you know, the cause of air pollution is the cause of climate change. And also it's a very socioeconomic issue, right? People are flocking into the capital city because there are no equal opportunities where they live. We have a huge land and not enough people. And ideally they want to stay close to their family, close to their nature, close to their nomadic, you know, traditional lifestyle with equal opportunity, with all the resources they need to, you know, have their basic human rights met. But unfortunately, that's not happening. So I think equity and justice will have to start from, you know, developing those regional province centers and providing them equal opportunity so they don't have to move their entire family when there is a climate disaster or when they want better education for their children. So it starts on local development efforts. And actually, you know, up until the last year, I think air pollution issue was mainly discussed in the capital city and Ulaanbaatar issue, but you know, international and local organizations and even governments started paying attention to the province centers, and especially in the province called Bayan Khongar, UNICEF is doing quite a bit of work on educating, you know, the province residents, insulating, improving the infrastructure in schools. They even tested out low-cost sensors in the last winter. So the focus is shifting from not only the capital city, but also to the rural areas. And I see it as a progress because people think that, oh, if we go to the countryside, we'll have fresh air, but that's not the case. And education and awareness is spreading outside the capital city. So I definitely think it's a huge step forward.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I know we're behind, we're over time. Yeah, I think this is a really important question, and thanks for the question. I mean, how does it look? How does equity and justice look? I think from a science perspective, equity, as I said before, I reemphasize this, the front line and fence line communities are leading the work. Scientists, I do not live in a community with these issues. I have a little bit of traffic in Booth, Maryland. I'm not living in a community with a power plant, with an incinerator, with a landfill, or multiple incinerators, multiple power plants, multiple refineries. I'm not living, for those, you know, the Gulf Coast of the US, the Houston Ship Channel, where EDF is doing some of their work on these issues with the ATSO community and Ward 5 community. So the folks the most impacted should be leading the work. And so the low-cost sensors, that's part of that equity issue, right? When it comes to justice, and I said this before, and I think a colleague from Mongolia just said this, and also maybe other colleagues have said this too, who gives companies the right to pollute? I mean, I made a statement last week. We should have zero emissions. I mean, you should have a human right, y'all, to clean air. Corporations now have the right to pollute. So we actually flipped it where we basically giving companies the right to pollute, which is very unjust. So we're gonna have justice. Justice is clean air. Justice is clean water. Justice is a safe environment. I mean, if we're having real talk here, that's justice. So the monitoring that we do is really, really important, but the justice doesn't happen until we get mitigation, until we get hazard reductions, until we get health improvements, till your kids don't have asthma, till your community's not dealing with climate disasters. That's what justice looks like, right? And so I think We made progress in many communities, shutting stuff down, right? But we still haven't done, on the justice side, we have a long way to go, and particularly in the US context, because as I said earlier, our permitting process is basically state-sanctioned poison to people. It's a form of state-sanctioned violence. I'm gonna put it like that. Until we can change how we do permitting, how we enforce our laws and regulations in the US, as I said, I talked about environmental racism. I'm gonna say this term. To me, it's not just environmental racism, I said before, it's environmental slavery, y'all. You're using communities to host land uses that wealthy white communities would never have to host, never think about hosting. So that's justice is when communities of color are not hosting facilities. Justice is when we have zero emissions. Justice is when people stop dying from air pollution. I'll be quiet. But we have a long way to go in the US, and of course it's been shared. There's other parts of the world where we have a long way to go as well. That's my soapbox, sorry.
Thank you. Other panelists? Antonio, do you have any thoughts?
I think that it's in Chile at least there are some things that are going in the better direction in terms of we are changing our power energy sources for more cleaner, and that's also impacting air pollution, of course, because of heating and technology is being more accessible for people. So I think it's when people have access to technology and when people have access to be part of the solutions, I think that's just. I think people can actually create their own justice, and by doing so is being part of the solution, and that's how I try to think about it. It's like, let's give people the possibility to actually be part of the solution and not having them a part of it. And that's not just politics and trying to change from top to bottom, but starting working on your own community and working for your own neighbors. And then, of course, trying to scale those solutions to other parts of the world. If you have access to that possibility, I think that's very just.
Thank you. Jacob?
I think he might have dropped out, actually.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for staying on the line. I know that we are over time. We hope that the discussion has sparked some interest in really thinking about environmental justice, not only within your own communities, but how there is a linkage across the globe. And there are common themes, common challenges, common struggles, but also being able to overcome them through citizen science engagement and air quality data. And we hope that you will continue on the conversation in your respective work in different fora. To close the session, we wanted to thank you all, panelists, for joining and for your very inspirational presentations. We'd like to thank the OpenAQ community for joining us today and for engaging in the work. And we'd also like to recognize in supporting our work and funding our work at OpenAQ. Stay in touch. Please contact us at info@openaq.org. Please sign up for our newsletter where we'll be sharing updates on our low-cost sensing platform that my colleague Shruti mentioned. We would love for you to join the newsletter where we'll be sharing the updates as well as our Slack community as well. We will be sharing the recording of this presentation shortly after the event. And please stay safe and healthy amidst all the challenges around the globe, and really appreciate you all tuning in from across the globe. I know that it's different time zones where you are, so really appreciate it, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.